Welcome to the YourTown television program. My name is Jeff Kline. I'm your host for this segment that's sponsored by the Naval Postgraduate School Foundation, where we bring you interesting faculty and students and what they're doing for the campus and for our country. And for this segment, I'd like to welcome Captain Edward McCabe, United States Navy. You are the Commander, Naval Air Force's Chair of Air Warfare here at the Naval Postgraduate School. Sure. And Tick, I'm going to call you that because that is what your call sign is. But tell me, your mother didn't give you that name, so tell us how you got a call sign name of Tick.
She did not, and thankfully it's a lot less insulting than some of the call signs that I've heard out there.
Yeah.
So mid-'90s, there was a Burger King toy of the Tick. He's a superhero, blue, 8 foot tall, big, muscular, loud, not really smart. And one of my air crewmen's kids on an E6 said, "Hey, Dad, that guy on your crew looks just like this." So he brought the toy in on a deployment, a det out to Travis Air Force Base.
Right.
And he said, "Sir, my son says you look like this." Everybody thought that was hilarious. And because it's an Air Force base, Burger King was on base. They had all the toys. So immediately the whole crew bought all the kids' meals they could. And then I ticked things all over my station, the nav station, the windows of the cockpit, and from then on, it just stuck.
And you haven't been able to kick that one since?
I have not. There are people who have no idea what my name is, but they know Tick when they hear it.
So not Lightning or Flash or Tiger or nothing like that?
Tick. No, not at all. Tick.
That's great. Well, now, you went to UCLA. Are you a natural Californian?
I did. So I grew up in California. I'm a Navy brat. My father was a P-3 air crewman, was P-3 air crewman, retired senior chief.
So did you grow up just north of here?
I did. I grew up in Moffett Field. Spent about 10 years there as my dad bounced from seagoing squadron to shore-based squadron, to the wing to squadron. Finished high school and then followed my eventually wife to UCLA on a ROTC scholarship, and then off on my naval career.
Well, great. Well, where did you go to high school?
I went to St. Francis High School in Mountain View, California.
Just up the road. That's great. And so you applied for the ROTC scholarship.
I did.
But they gave you several colleges, but you went down to UCLA.
They did. I got the scholarship, and I just had to get into a university that had a ROTC program. And my wife was smart enough to pick a school that she thought I might follow her to.
Oh, I see. Good for you.
And I did. I went down to UCLA and went through the ROTC program there.
Successful marriages are built on just those realizations. So that's good.
She realized it before I did, but yes.
Oh, there you go. Exactly.
Behind every man is a better woman.
That's
usually.
Exactly right. So what did you study at UCLA?
I was a political science major, which makes all the Naval Postgraduate School guys kind of frown, but I think it helped me. It helped me with my writing and helped me with my just broad-based nature. I liked math. I got into UCLA as a math major, but I realized that my class standing was being affected by the fact that I wasn't a great mathematician.
Right.
So I would say that I'm not going to use the word, but I was an artist in another area. So I put my writing skills to work. I found that area. My grades improved. My class standing improved, and I got an aviation slot, so it worked out.
So exactly, why did you choose aviation?
Again, my father's example. He was an air crewman on P-3s, so I grew up watching him go off on deployments. I got to go to his squadrons, even fly with his squadron as a midshipman, and see what that life was like. And all through college, I thought I wanted to fly P-3s until I got introduced to the E-6.
So what does the E-6 do?
The E-6 Mercury is a nuclear command and control platform. So they relay messages from the President of the United States to his nuclear forces deployed. And because of that, they stay mostly CONUS-based. And their deployment cycle is a lot different than a typical 6-month carrier cycle.
Sure, of course.
And as a newly married ensign, that had an appeal to me.
Right.
And it worked out. It did keep me at an Air Force base for most of my career, but it worked out.
Well, doesn't that require that some aircraft be airborne all the time?
It did. During the Cold War, and up until the early 90s, say 92, 93, there was always an E-6 airborne, 24/7 for about 20-something years. We stopped that. And we still maintain our ground alerts, and we do random operations in the air, which is what keeps us responsive to any needs.
Sure. Now, this was at Tinker Air Force Base, is that right?
That's correct.
In Oklahoma. Had you ever been to Oklahoma before?
I had never been to Oklahoma before. I was born in Iowa, but I'd never been to Oklahoma.
So you got a new appreciation for Oklahoma.
I do, for the heartland. Yes, the heartland.
Okay, great. So you went to aviation school. You joined your first squadron there. And then tell us a little bit about what happened next.
So after my first tour,
right.
I selected orders to the Naval Postgraduate School.
Oh, great.
Which is a bit out of the norm for an aviator, but in our community, we were a bit out of the norm as a squadron on an Air Force base and just the way we do business. So it worked out for me. I came and studied Joint C4I.
Which is actually kind of appropriate.
Very appropriate.
Right.
I didn't realize it then. When I think back, I did not understand the bigger picture of what our business does, which I learned later in my career. But it certainly, as I was doing it, I began to get a little bit more of a picture. And certainly now, as I look back, it was absolutely the perfect degree to take back to my community and be able to utilize that knowledge. It's something that naval aviation doesn't do a great job of. It's one of the things we're trying to fix.
Well, we're going to get the fact you returned to MPS here in a little bit, but have you seen some of your old professors that you actually had classes
I have.
with?
I've seen a couple of professors. I've seen, I think it was Dean Boger, who was one of the guys who signed off on my thesis when I was a student. And I'm right next to, doggone it, Professor Mike Ross, who was here when I was here before. And it is incredible. And that continuity, that's part of the beauty of the Naval Postgraduate School here.
Well, it is. In fact, let me put a plug in on that. That's one of the things I realized when I was a student and later graduated from here, was that consistency. I call them the stable of horses. They don't like to hear that, but in fact, they are thoroughbreds here that are consistently are available and do work on national problems. So, and then you come back, and sure enough, they're there as well. So that's a great thing. They actually come back.
Stable of thoroughbreds.
Stable of thoroughbreds. Maybe that's a better one.
Right. Or crown jewels of the nation.
We'll work on that. We'll work on that particular one.
Yes, sir.
Well, what did you do your thesis in while you were here?
So my thesis was actually unrelated to Joint C4I.
Of course it was.
Of course it was, because why would it be? I had no one directing me. So the Bear Trap program, which was a program run by the anti-submarine warfare guys, the P3 guys. They had a program to analyze signals, and they needed a help program for how to use that program. And so working in HTML, which was the coding language of the time, myself and a surface warfare student named Chris Stone built the help program for that program for the operational use out in the fleet.
Great. So it was directly applied.
It was, and hopefully useful. I mean, I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that's used that program and used the help program, but I felt like I was doing something that mattered. And I think that's what every student wants, is to do something that matters.
Well, I think so too. And the Bear Trap program may not be specifically used right now, but what you did and its future applications certainly will be. Well, after you left MPS, where'd you go?
So after MPS, as is the norm for the Navy, I owed them sea duty.
Right.
So they sent me to sea. They sent me to the USS Carl Vinson out of Bremerton, Washington.
Okay.
And that time frame was summer of 2000. So workups and then deployment on the Carl Vinson for 9/11.
And what did you do on Carl Vinson?
I was a shooter, catapult and arresting gear officer.
Okay, so you were the guy that hit the helmet and
that is
pointed
correct.
It and they launched it off. Is that right?
That is correct. Run them
down.
up. We launched and recovered all the airplanes. On the flight, you start in the gear, catching them because it's a bit less complicated, and then you graduate forward to launching aircraft off the pointy end of the carrier and taking care of all those aviation boatswain mates equipment that are out there on the deck running around, keeping them safe, and just running a safe operation. And we completed that deployment without losing a body. And no serious injuries, so
that's a positive.
I think
thing.
that's the positive. It's not the sole thing I remember about that cruise, but it was a point of pride.
No, I can certainly understand that. Now, how long a days was that on the flight deck? 18
Those
hours.
Those are long
something?
days.
Yeah,
those are long days. The workup period when you're first getting kind of breaking off the rust at the beginning of deployment.
Right.
Those days aren't so long, but when you get into the motion, so 9/11 happened right after we pulled out of Singapore. We kind of stopped in the North Arabian Sea there from the 11th until October 7th when we launched the first strikes. And from that point on, it was business.
Now that was Operation Enduring Freedom.
It was.
Right.
It was.
And that was a very long days then, I can imagine, quite a bit.
We were the day carrier, so basically as soon as the sun came up, we started launching aircraft, and we recovered our last aircraft after the sun had gone down.
And what years were those? Do you remember?
That was 2000. It was October 7th of 2001 until, I think, till Christmas when we pulled back into Singapore.
Now, was your deployment extended?
It was not. It was not. We were relieved on time, and we got to go home on time, much to all the families' happiness. And their crews' happiness.
Yeah, no, absolutely, because that is a. Plus, there's not many port visits when you're there fighting a war for crying out loud.
There are not. We lost our Australia. I've lost my Australia trip 3 times. That was but it was worth it. To be where the country needed us to be, when the country needed us to be there, was something that I'll never forget. And I've talked about several times with interested parties, because, so many of the veterans have served and never had the opportunity to be that guy right there where, or with that group that the country needed. Exactly.
Right.
Exactly where the country needed us to be, when the country needed us to be there, and to take care of business. And it was something special.
Well, I'll put a plug in for our service as that case, as that's the value of sea basing and the value of the United States Navy for our nation itself. Well, so you actually only got a chance to visit a couple countries then on that single deployment.
That's correct.
After Carl Vinson, what did you do?
After the Carl Vinson, we came back and I started my department head tour.
So so we went back to Tinker.
Back to Tinker.
Right.
Back to Tinker to wrap up my department head tour with the airmen of EQ3. And then from there off to San Diego to work on the Air Boss's staff.
By Air Boss, you'll have to explain
I'm
that
sorry.
one.
The Commander of Naval Air Forces.
Okay, so the three-star that's in charge of all airplanes in the Navy.
That is correct. Yeah. So I was the E6 representative on his staff out in San Diego, working all the E6 issues, and thankfully there aren't a lot of E6 issues for the boss to deal with. He's got bigger problems with carriers and the other things he's dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So I was able to pick up some collateral duties, and those collateral duties, running the PCO course, seeing all the COs come through.
Prospective commanding officers.
Commanding officers. Right. And getting them along their way and hoping to join them at some point.
Now, had you ever lived in San Diego before?
I had not.
Oh, did you enjoy that tour?
It was fantastic.
Yeah.
It is. We're lucky enough to find a place that we could afford on Coronado.
Oh, wow.
And it was, I called it Mayberry.
Yeah.
It really was. People driving golf carts in the street because the speed limit's 25.
That's
and
right.
The concerts on the lawn or whatever there. And during the summertime, and Spreckles, people with their wagons and blankets and wine and kids playing ball. It was idyllic.
Fantastic.
Great town.
So you were on the air staff. Then you had to go back to Tinker again, right?
I did. Now, first I went to be the chief of NMCC Site R, so National Military Command Center Site R. That's a Raven Rock Mountain Complex in Maryland. So that's where I got my Joint Staff badge and Joint Staff Complete by going out to the backup for the Pentagon right there in Maryland.
That's probably a good place to be the backup of the Pentagon.
It was a great place to be the backup to the Pentagon. It really was. And again, back into my Joint C4I, the nuclear command and control realm.
Right.
I mean, they're where it all starts, the NMCC. So being able to see that infrastructure and see how the process works from that side greatly benefited me as a commanding officer when I came back. And as the Commodore when I took
over. Well, again, I get to jump questions in advance because I'm the host, so to speak. So does Dan Boger have you actually giving some of these sea stories in class now, in the C4I class structure?
He does not. He has not asked me that yet.
Yeah, but wait till he sees this video.
Right.
He's going to probably get it.
And he comes.
Okay.
All right.
So you did your joint tour
I did.
in the mountain,
I did.
so to speak, and then you went back to Tinker after that.
And then I was selected for command.
Well, that was your commanding officer job.
So I came back to Tinker and then spent the next 8 years at Tinker. 5 consecutive tours at Tinker as the XO and CO of EQ3, as the OPSO of the wing, and then selected for Major Command as the Deputy and Commodore of the wing. So a long time there, but great continuity for my family, for sure.
Did any of your family go to OU then? Or?
Both of my sons went to and graduated from the University of Oklahoma.
I was going to say.
Boomer. So they're both Sooners.
Yeah.
My daughter did not follow them. She's at UCLA.
Okay.
The alma
so there
mater.
you go. So
exactly.
The smart one went to UCLA. Is that what you tell them?
That's exactly how she would put it.
That's right.
The smart one went to UCLA. So it worked. But great continuity for them. They all got to go to the same high school and graduate from the same high school.
And that's important for dependents of military.
It
that's
was.
True.
I mean, we had talked as a family coming up through the Navy, and the one regret was I was unable to give them that stability, that the roots. That a lot of people were able to grow, but that opportunity to allow them to do that
that number of tours. So you became the wing commander then, is that right?
I did.
Wow.
That was my job before coming back to the NPS.
Okay. Well, fantastic. And then the Air Boss, or the Naval Air Force Commander, decided to establish a chair here. Tell us a little bit about that chair.
He did. So the Air Warfare Chair is designed to kind of emphasize, I would say re-emphasize, but I'm going to go with emphasize in-residence education for aviators. We have not done a great job valuing education in-residence education in naval aviation.
And mainly that's part of the career cycle challenge that you're trying to figure out.
It is.
Yeah.
And you know, it's not incestuous necessarily, but if you look at our leaders in aviation, they didn't get an opportunity to go in residence because they flew airplanes for their whole career. And so when they look to the new leaders, they're looking for guys who look like them, who flew in an airplane, who are warriors first. But I think we've made the realization that in the high-end fight, if we think that we're going to compete at that level, then we need to build strategic thinkers.
Right.
We need to develop that critical thinking skill that's developed in residence, and really only in residence, when guys can focus on what they're doing and think about that next level question. And if we're going to do that, then we've got to start somewhere. I think I was one of the first steps. The NAV admin, which just came out, which requires in-residence education prior to major command.
Right.
That's another step. And there's a few more steps to come, because what we need to do is get a cadre of people through here and then get them into command.
Right.
And then once you've done that and you've established those senior aviators who've done this, then it'll be inculcated into our culture. And it'll be part of it.
Well, it's almost as though you have to go by type aircraft to see where the career progression is by type aircraft.
You do.
Would it best place to send a junior or mid-grade officer to Naval Postgraduate School?
And it does vary. I mean, I think TAC Air is all the same, whether it's a Hornet, Super, Growler,
right.
Even the E2 community. I think as far as the air wing goes, that timing has got to be post-department head. There's no other time for it.
Right.
I think some communities, P3s, E6s, I think we've got, or sorry, P8s. A6s.
Yeah.
I think we've got an opportunity in there, particularly for NFOs, to get this in-register education a little earlier. But for pilots, I think it's critical. It's not if we need it, it's when we need it.
Right.
And that when is post-department head, after you've become that solidified warrior. You know the aircraft, you know all that. Now we can build that in, and it's actually a great time to then have that person roll back into command and be able to use those skills that he just developed. To be a better leader, to ask better questions, to improve readiness.
Now, are there particular education programs that the Air Boss is interested in, or mainly he's just interested right now of getting officers to the point where they get that critical thinking skill?
I think you're spot on. Right now, he's just interested in guys in the door. And that has a value. If you push everybody into one curriculum, you get you get one facet of it. I think allowing aviators, and we've got them spread out throughout the campus, throughout the schools, business school, engineering, in NSA, we've got them all. And that's developing different sides of it. And as all those people progress through and make command, I think that's going to make us more well-rounded. It's going to enable us to look at a problem from all sides inside the organization and be better.
Okay, we got about a minute left, and I have to ask you this question.
Okay.
You're going to get involved in research at MPS. I know you've already started in some ways. Your expertise is important for the faculty and students to tap and the projects they're working on. And one of our major issues that we have, or major research project we have, is the unmanned system programs that we have. And I noticed from your bio that you were focused on unmanned systems while at the Naval Air Staff. So when do you predict that we won't need pilots anymore?
I don't think we'll see that. Not in our lifetimes. No pilots. But I think in certain facets, transport aircraft, I think we could almost go there today. I think people aren't comfortable with it yet, but I think we'll see. I think we'll see it. I think our kids will see. They could see unmanned airliners. You only have the once in a lifetime Sully incident.
Right.
But for every one of those, you've got 90 incidents where an aircraft flies itself into the water because a person's not paying attention. I think the future of that is almost unlimited. It's only limited by our own paradigms.
Right. Well, Captain McCabe, thank you very much for your service in the Navy, and thank you very much for being at the Naval Postgraduate School. We're going to leverage you to the max while you're here, and hopefully you'll be successful in bringing a lot of new naval aviators into the programs across campus.
That's the plan.
All right. And thank you for joining us for this segment of the YourTown television program sponsored by the Naval Postgraduate School Foundation. Join us again when we talk about faculty and students who are doing interesting things for our school and the nation.